How dare you tell me to turn down my mariachi music? The defendant then began to strike ma'am in the face with a closed fist 30 times. Whoa! Should I start raising bail money? Yeah, maybe. I no longer feel protected or respected as a judge in this administration. You're not. You don't automatically get respect because you put on a robe.
Where and when and how she was arrested, and the fact that she was arrested at the courthouse rather than her own residence. The fact that she was placed in a jail cell for hours before her arraignment was called in the court later in the afternoon. These things are unprecedented.
Judge Dugan, the judge who illegally escorted an illegal alien out of her courtroom out the back door, has now been suspended. Now, there's more to this. Is the suspension with pay? We think it is. But here is what the Supreme Court of Wisconsin has for us. You see, this is related to Hannah C. Dugan. And if you don't remember who she was the judge that we saw scooting her booty right out of the courthouse after she was charged with two crimes. One, obstruction, and the other, concealment. Remember, this was the scene. She got arrested. This is kind of like what she was trying to do with the illegal, kind of sneak him out the back. But this was somebody capturing her and saying, hey, you want to answer any questions, Judge? Of course, she did not want to do that. But she was originally charged with two counts. One, concealing an individual to prevent his arrest and discovery, and also obstruction, right? Both of these were criminal charges in the Eastern District of Wisconsin. And this judge, not only has she been suspended temporarily with pay, we think, but she'll also be defending this case. Now, this article came out from local news. Milwaukee says that she has hired the LeBron James of lawyers. And who is it? Oh, it's an ex-Bush person. You're kidding. It's the former Bush Solicitor General. It sounds like she's going to dig her heels in and throw her weight around and really defend herself and play in the big leagues on this one. So we're going to hear from that and learn more about who Paul Clement is, as well as learn who the illegal alien is. This dude right here was the person that she tried to escape out of the courtroom. And we've got his criminal complaint also queued up. So we'll learn what he was charged with and why Judge Dugan didn't think it was concerning that the victims were seated in the courtroom as she was afuera-ing this dude outside of federal custody. But here's the big thesis on this. Hannah C. Dugan now suspended. And the AP News was also reporting on this. Here's a picture of this woman, if you recall. And she was suspended by the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Here's what they said. They said, all right, regarding Hannah C. Dugan, the judge, the court has learned that Milwaukee County Circuit Court Judge Hannah C. Dugan has been charged with two federal criminal offenses. One of which is a felony and one of which is a misdemeanor. Supreme Court of Wisconsin chiming in on this. We got notice. This court is charged in the Wisconsin Constitution with exercising superintending and administrative authority over the courts of this state. Now, in the exercise of that constitutional authority, and in order to uphold the public's confidence in the courts of this state during the pendency of the criminal proceeding against Judge Dugan, we conclude as the Supreme Court, on our own motion, right? Nobody's asked them to do it, that it is in the interest of the public that she be temporarily relieved of her official duties. Now, accordingly, it is ordered in the exercise of this court's superintending and administrative authority over all courts in this state that Circuit Judge Hannah Dugan is temporarily prohibited from exercising the powers of a circuit court judge in the state effective this date of this order and until further order of the court. Sent over to everybody else, including the court itself. And so she is suspended temporarily. Question is she going to be getting paid? And this was sent in by this individual called Wisconsin Right Now. Breaking news over there on X at Wisconsin_now saying, it appears that the Wisconsin Supreme Court is choosing not to suspend her pay, though. So she's getting paid to do nothing? Someone sent this email to the communications at the court. Hi, is Dugan's pay being suspended also? Thanks. Hi, Jessica. Thank you for reaching out. It says, the court's official response to your question is that, quote, the order speaks for itself. All actions taken by the court are laid out in the order. So sounds like they didn't touch her pay. So she's going to still get paid, and she's going to be hiring some attorneys to come in and help her defend against this thing. Homeland Security gave us the photograph. Eduardo Flores Ruiz, the illegal alien that the Wisconsin judge was shielding, has a violent criminal record with charges including strangulation, suffocation, battery, domestic abuse, illegally entering the U.S. twice, saying the American people have a mandate for President Trump to make America safe and secure our homeland. And I don't know, maybe she just looked at him in the eyes and said, I really see myself in him. And she just thought, I can relate to him and I empathize with his struggle. So what happened was she escorted him out of the courtroom in violation of a warrant presented to her by federal agents. But here is what she was doing this on behalf of and for. before. She said, here, you have to escape these charges, essentially, and adjourned the case. Remember, the prosecutor was there. Maybe he was going to want to set the case for trial or maybe make a motion for change of bond or something. But she adjourned it and got him out of there. And since he's illegal, right, what would the next step be? Once he knows that ICE is looking for him, he's gone. She was not just facilitating like a continuance. She knew that this dude was going to leave, that he was going to flee. Why would he come back if he knows ICE is going to be at his courtroom? Never, right? So he was not going to come back. So basically, she was also facilitating another crime, which would be a future failure to appear, which would require her to issue a warrant for this dude if she would even do that. Ridiculous. So here's what the charges were. You see, this is a criminal complaint that was filed against that illegal Eduardo. Filed back March 18th. It was working her way through her court, Judge Dugan, saying this guy got charged with 3 counts. 1, misdemeanor battery, domestic abuse, infliction of physical pain or injury. So 3 misdemeanors, domestic abuse, domestic violence. The above named defendant, Eduardo, was in this location, caused bodily harm to one person called DT. So we'll have different victims here. We got 3 of them, actually. DT is one. We've got MGS, so initials, and MAM. So MGS, MAM, and DT. So this dude swinging at everybody, saying he did cause bodily harm to this person. He had intent to cause that harm, and he did it without their consent. It's a Class A misdemeanor. He could be in prison for 9 months on that one. Another one, same charge, 9 months on this one. Same offense, Class A misdemeanor, and another one to MAM. Okay, so what happened? We got these 3 people who all got abused by this dude before the judge escaped him out of the courtroom. On the above date at around 11:38 p.m. at night, Officer Taylor Zuby was dispatched to a location for a battery call. Someone calls the cops. This dude is beating us up. Upon arrival, he was met at the door by the caller called MGS. MGS led the officers upstairs. Hi, officers. Thank you for coming. Yeah, he's upstairs. We ran upstairs and we met DTS and MAM, right? The 2 other victims of the crime. We also saw Eduardo, born in 1994, the above named defendant. Additional officers were dispatched because due to MGS being the only individual that spoke Spanish, maybe English is what he meant, because everybody else spoke Spanish, I would guess. Anyways, MGS stated that she was lying in bed, so female comes to the front door, when she heard screaming from the kitchen. MGS went into the kitchen and observed DTS breaking up a fight between MAM and Eduardo. MGS stated that is when she called the police. Says, oh my gosh. Said DTS was accidentally struck while trying to break up the 2. So we got this battle. We got 4 people. So Eduardo is battling with MAM. They're fighting it out. DTS runs down, tries to break it up. He's like, dudes, calm down. And as he jumps in to break it up, he gets an elbow or pop to the face. Girl standing there going, what the heck? She calls the cops because it's out of control. Now on scene, Eduardo claimed it was a mutual fight. He says, hey man, he attacked me. He says it arose because I was playing loud music. At the time, MAM said that the defendant was just a friend that was staying the night at the residence, right? So this dude, Eduardo, comes over, starts playing music loud. MAM comes down. He says, excuse me, we're trying to rest here. Can you please turn it down? He says, I don't care. This is my house now. And it goes off the wire. Officers observed red marks and scratches to both MAM and the defendant. So these 2, duking it out. On March 13th, around 7 p.m., MAM and DTS walked into District 3 to elaborate on the previous night, right? So this happens. I don't know if they made an arrest or anything. Let's see. That night, they stated, well, actually, Eduardo lives there and has been living there for the last year. So then they re-interviewed MGS, right? So the other person who was there and called the cops and led the cops inside. They re-interviewed her. She stated that as she was trying to break up the fight in the kitchen, Eduardo intentionally elbowed her in the left arm without consent. He's like, no, yeah, he hit me too. It caused me pain. Showed officers the bruise on her arm. Says, look, man, this dude is actually not a guest. He lives there, but he's like a maniac. He hurt me too. Stated that she was confused the day before. I didn't know what was happening. He lived at the residence. I didn't know what to say, but he lives there. Okay. He's not just staying there. So he actually lives there and had been living there when she first moved there since January 2025. So MAM, the other probably dude, stated the altercation began the night before when he confronted his roommate. He says, hey, Eduardo, stop playing the music so loud. Music sucks. Trying to get some sleep here. MAM sent a text message to Eduardo asking him, can you turn down the music, please? Then MAM stated that Eduardo then walked into the kitchen and began to yell obscenities towards him. You effing A, mother son of a B, how dare you tell me to turn down my mariachi music? The defendant then began to strike MAM in the face with a closed fist 30 times. Whoa. What'd you say about my mariachi music? Ah! without consent and causing pain. Ma'am stated that while being struck, he fell to the ground and his girlfriend, DTS, tried to get between the two of them. Ma'am stated that while DTS got between them, then Eduardo began beating her, striking her in the forehead and arm with a closed fist before shoving her into the kitchen, causing her to fall as well. Ma'am stated he was able to regain his footing and place a chair between himself and the defendant to gain separation, blocking him off with the chair like a maniac. But the defendant was able to grab Ma'am by the neck, impeded his breathing for 6 seconds. See, that's like felony status, right? In Arizona, you suffocate somebody like that, you aggravate that from a regular assault into aggravated assault. You can't cut off somebody's windpipe for 6 seconds while punching Ma'am with his offhand, grabbing him here and just beating him. This judge is like, oh no, that's okay. He deserved it. So let's escape out the back. Ma'am stated that they began wrestling on the ground before the cousin, MGS, intervened and attempted to break him up. Now, after the defendant was separated from Ma'am, Eduardo stated he would really show him what he was about the following day. Ma'am and DTS went to the hospital for their injuries. They got Tylenol and ibuprofen. None of these three people consented to being struck by Eduardo. And so the judge, got this probable cause statement. All this was submitted to her court. And she said, well, we want him in our country a little bit longer. So we're not going to let ICE come and pick this dude up. So she committed a crime, in my opinion. And now she will be defending herself. Now, she got suspended. So what we see here is Judge Hannah Dugan, who was arrested for obstructing ICE, now has this sign outside the courtroom. So someone posted this up there. It says, if any attorney, witness coordinator, or other court official knows or believes that a person feels unsafe, please request a Zoom appearance. So now they're just approved Zoom appearances so the illegals can call into court. That's what they're up to. Now, there's also another judge, apparently, who's also out there, who is in Sawyer County in Wisconsin, who's doing the same thing. She's threatening, according to Wisconsin right now, saying not to hold court because of the arrest. She wrote that she has no intention of allowing anyone to be taken out of her courtroom by ICE and being sent to a concentration camp. Okay, so these judges are getting pretty aggressive out there, right? They're going to hold Zoom hearings, okay? And these are just misdemeanors. So they're just misdemeanor courts, so they're not felonies. So they'll just let them Zoom in and ICE can't pick them up, or they'll just refuse. Maybe this judge should be charged too. She made these comments in an email sent to judges. And hey, Wisconsin right now got these emails, so media credit them. Here's what they say. This came out from Monica Isham. Good morning, all. For those of you who do not know me, I am Monica Isham, Sawyer County Circuit Judge for Branch 2. I've been in this position for less than 2 years. Oh, here we go. I was elected as the first woman, first Native American, first minority altogether to serve as a circuit judge in Sawyer County. These people are freaking nuts. Why would you introduce yourself that way? Oh my gosh. I have sworn an oath to support the Constitution. Great. Since January, while I've endured many racial attacks in my court, it's probably because you lead with this type of crap. I'm a minority woman, Native American. Hi, nice to meet you. Okay, thanks, Judge. I have sworn an oath to the Constitution. Whatever. Now, while on the bench in my courtroom, I was called an immigrant. I have been told I have no jurisdiction over white people in my country. If you're going to be offended when people talk crap to you as a judge, maybe you shouldn't be a judge, you giant baby. I had a prospective juror loudly proclaim that she would not follow any orders from a brown or black person, and that the defendant were brown or black, they would find them guilty. Welcome to society. Yeah, there's a lot of people who go the other way as well. Okay, you have to be the judge to kind of flesh through this. What a sob story. This is a pathetic person who thinks that this gives them meaning or purpose when they go through their litany of horribles. Pathetic, honestly. Says, I'm not going to send somebody to a concentration camp without due process, as both of the constitutions we swore to support requires. Should I start raising bail money? Yeah, maybe. I no longer feel protected or respected as a judge in this administration. You're not. You don't automatically get respect because you put on a robe. If there is no guidance for us and no support for us, I will refuse to hold court. Good. You should resign. I will not put myself or my staff who may feel compelled by any way to follow federal law. Then you should resign. If you're going to break the law, you should resign. I hope, man, ICE should just hang out outside her courtroom, honestly. Just hang out. She's a high priority court because she's an obstructionist-like person. We have a Judicial District 10 meeting on May 9th. I respectfully ask we be given some guidance. We may discuss this in Group 10. Please forward this along. If this costs me my job or gets me arrested, then at least I know I did the right thing. Well, I hope it costs you both, actually. Yeah, because if you're going to be encouraging other judges and conspiring with Dugan to have other judges obstruct federal law, you should be arrested for that. You're involved in a conspiracy. I mean, there were Trump attorneys and state advocates who were arrested for a lot less than that and charged with crimes in various states. So yes, Monica, first of all, you don't deserve any respect for leading like this. What a pathetic way to open an email. That's what's happening in Wisconsin. And meanwhile, we've got this judge who is gearing up. Judge Hannah C. Duncan Dugan has an all-star legal team, including LeBron James of lawyers. And you can see here, she's getting a bunch of people to come circle the wagons and protect her. The federal obstruction case against Circuit Judge Dugan has drawn an all-star team of legal talent. Bunch of people coming in. Stephen Biskupik is here. We've also got another Republican who oversaw a bunch of high-profile investigations, but the most prominent is this dude. U.S. Solicitor General called Paul Clement. And you know who the Solicitor General is, right? That's the person who argues in front of the Supreme Court. As Solicitor General from 2005 to 2008, more than 100 cases in front of SCOTUS, currently representing Wilmer Hale, who's suing the Trump administration as well. He's been dubbed by some as the LeBron James of lawyers. Jason Luxzak and others are both partners at another prominent law firm. And so all the Bushies and all the neocon Republicans are joining forces with the Democrats to help judges help illegals escape federal law. Also, this person, Craig Mastantuono, is also someone else, another attorney for Dugan, longtime go-to criminal defense attorney in Milwaukee, and more. So she's assembling a whole team. Federal team is led by Assistant U.S. Attorney who's prosecuting her. Keith Alexander is a veteran prosecutor. This dude's got 15 years, heads the criminal division over there. This other person's called Kelly Watska, Deputy Chief of the Criminal Division in charge of financial crimes. And another person, Richard Froling, acting U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Wisconsin, oversees the federal team. So this is going to get spicy, right? We were asking ourselves, how are these judges going to handle these prosecutions? We saw the other judge in New Mexico. You know, he resigned already. He's not fighting it. He'll probably take a plea deal and just call it a day. Maybe even help incriminate the others around him and facilitate, you know, more charges against other TDA people based on whatever evidence he's got. But this is opposite, right? She did not resign. She was forced to be suspended. And the Supreme Court may have gone the other way, right? They could have said, well, actually, you know, we'll just let her hang out. These are federal charges and we're fighting fascism or whatever, right? They could have done that, but they didn't. So they suspended her. And now she's going to fight. So we'll see what comes out of it. But this guy is the one who is the LeBron James of lawyers, so-called. 2005 to 2008, worked for Bush Solicitor General. Georgetown University, during his career, argued many cases opposing gun control, defending a ban on same-sex marriage, advocating for the Affordable Care Act to stop it, defending Republican gerrymandering, and more. So he's fought on the right side of a lot of good causes on behalf of the Trump administration. Now, getting that money. Man, I wonder what he's charging her, too. How much an hour do you think? $1,500 an hour? $2,000 an hour, maybe? Woo, I'm sure it's a lot. All right, so she's going to be paying for that, but the battle will continue, and a lot of people are rushing to her defense, the usual suspects, like this guy, David Brooks. Here's a little bit of what he said. He's like, she's a heroic person. We don't know the details, but she's heroic. These are these guys.
Trying to send a note of intimidation, not only to her, but to all judges and maybe to all Americans.
Intimidation?
But
don't break the law.
I don't yet know the specific details of this case, whether she escorted the guy out the jury door or whether she's let him. So that's all murky. I don't want to comment on this specific case. But especially on the issue of immigration, there are a lot of people who are appalled by what the administration is doing. And there will be times for civil disobedience. And to me, let's say she did escort this guy out the door. If federal enforcement agencies come to your courtroom and you help a guy escape, that is two things. One, it strikes me as maybe something illegal.
Yeah.
But it also strikes me as something heroic.
Okay.
And in times of trouble, then people are sometimes called to do civil disobedience. And in my view, when people do civil disobedience, they have to pay the price. That's part of the heroism of it, frankly. And so you can both think that she shouldn't have legally done this and that morally protecting somebody against, maybe not even in this case, but in other cases, frankly, a predatory enforcement agency.
Wild. Well, so you got these guys who are out there. They'll take an illegal loving judge who is escorting somebody out of her courtroom in the back door to avoid a federal warrant arresting her, while there are victims seated in the courtroom where the dude that you're helping escape, he beat them in the face and the elbow and other locations. And he will sit there and call her a hero, right? Sometimes you need a little bit of civil disobedience out there. It's interesting. These people are nuts. So here was another one. This is that foreign-born congressman who can't even speak English, who's impeaching our president now to pay off his campaign debt. Sri Thanadar, the grifting clown, says Western Lensman, also very articulate, introduced the articles of impeachment, and now he's in Congress screaming about it.
Just last week, federal agents attacked our principles of federalism by arresting Judge Hannah C. Dugan of Wisconsin inside a courthouse because Donald Trump and Kash Patel did not like how Judge Dugan administered her courtroom, a state courtroom, I remind you. Arresting state judges for exercising powers reserved to the states.
Okay, so he needs to get Rosetta Stone and work on his speech transcripts. We can't listen to any more of that. They also brought out Chris Christie, who looks a lot like Judge Duncan Dugan and probably shares a lot of the same empathies and things. Like, you know, it's a lot of work for her to get up out of her chair and escape this dude out the back of the courtroom. And so he's he's basically on Team Dugan. They probably go get donuts together.
Tell you, Martha, this is one of those situations where everybody, I think, is acting badly. All right, so first off, I don't know what this judge was thinking in terms of trying to help a criminal defendant try to avoid a arrest warrant from federal authorities. And, it's not a typical judicial action in my experience, not something a judge would normally do. Now, on the other side, when you really read through this, I don't know that the complaint, the indictment that was filed is completely consistent with the affidavit that was filed because, this guy did wind up in a public courtroom near public elevators after he left the courtroom and was seen by one of the agents who was there to assist in the apprehension. So whether or not the way they're characterizing these facts are completely accurate is something we're going to have to see when we get to a trial in this case. I think the judge overstepped her bounds here. Now, whether the appropriate remedy here, Martha, is an arrest and a federal indictment, clearly what the Justice Department is trying to do is send a very, very aggressive message against everyone in this conduct. And I don't know that that's something that I would have found necessary to do, especially when you apprehended the person within moments after they left the courtroom.
Yeah, okay, because I guess no harm, no foul. You can allow state judges to just obstruct federal agents as long as they catch them in the end. What a joke. Now, we had this one got clipped out. This guy was even saying, yeah, it was unprecedented and performative cruelty. And you remember this guy, this was Andy McCabe, one of the worst liars from the FBI's recent past, out talking about this on CNN.
Probable cause phase, which is where we are right now. And I think when you start looking at how the judge was treated after the events that led to the charge, so where and when and how she was arrested, and the fact that she was arrested at the courthouse rather than her own residence, the fact that she was placed in a jail cell for hours before her arraignment was called in the court later in the afternoon. These things are unprecedented. Typically, upstanding members of the community who have no criminal history and aren't accused of a violent act are allowed to self-surrender at the
Tell that to like 1,200 J6ers, okay, with no criminal history at all, who are allowed to self-surrender. They had raids. They kicked their doors in, raiding them all over the place. Hey, man, no one's above the law there, Andy. And I think the statute of limitations has probably expired on his crimes, but that's hilarious. Normally, people are just allowed to self-surrender. Not in the Biden DOJ, they weren't. They raided everybody. Are you kidding me? So Mays did a great clip on this. They're having to eat a lot of their words because they spent the last 4 years, and they said that, due process, whatever they said it was, while they violated the rights of American citizens and no one even woke up or batted an eye over it. So here's this side by side of one of the dumbest commentators on MSNBC.
He is being treated no better or worse than anyone else.
Trump.
This is not selective prosecution. That this is not somebody who's singled out. That he is being treated just like anyone else. That is what it means to have a rule of law. That is what the Justice Department is really signaling and messaging here, is that everyone will be treated, as Merrick Garland has said, as equally in this country. This is really a great day for America. So there has been a violation here that we know for sure, and it is not the judge. Right, exactly. You don't do it. Even if you thought that there was a ground for doing this, the judgment call that you thought that this is the case to bring, it tells you everything. There is no adult in the room who would have said, are you kidding me? Why would you possibly do this? And the answer is because we want to send a signal to the judiciary, and that's what you shouldn't be doing.
Okay, so obviously they can't even see their double standards when they hit them right in the face. But we also had some good reaction from some others. So Bill Barr was out, and even Bill Barr came out and said, Trump's allowed to do this, okay? You can't be a federal judge obstructing the Department of Justice, or a state level judge obstructing the Department of Justice. And Dugan is getting what's coming to her. Old Bill Barr's back.
I doubt it'll get to the Supreme Court because I think the law is so clear. The states argue, the sanctuary states argue, they don't have to affirmatively assist us, the feds, in getting hold of these illegal aliens. But this isn't a question of assisting. This is actually interfering with, of harboring, of getting in the way. And so I don't think there's any question about this. And I think it's time for zero tolerance and getting back to basics, which are that judges and state officials are still citizens. They're subject to the federal law, and they cannot interfere in or impede the federal function. So I'm 100% in agreement with what's done.
Well, of course, you know how the media is going going to play it. And of course, the Democrats already have begun. The protests have begun, suggesting that this is Trump again being the imperial president who's dictator now and ignoring the courts. Do you think any courts will pick up on that? Any courts to which these cases might be appealed?
Yeah, I mean, some state courts, there's some very liberal state courts, they may try to go down that path, but at the end of the day, they'll be slapped down because these judges do not have the right to interfere with the federal government performing its function.
And Bill Barr is right? What's happening here is a pattern that is existing across jurisdictions, whether they're at the federal level or the state level, whether they're in D.C. or in Wisconsin or Colorado. Judges think that they are in charge of policy. They're not. And when things don't go their way, they throw little temper tantrums. Many of them do it in the form of a wino type of opinion, like Beryl Howell writes out after, Long Friday night, Trump, having some emotional turmoil in her personal life, takes it out on Trump, have some more wine, whatever. Others do this. They throw little temper tantrums after they got done, reading Bernie's book or whatever. Fight fascism. And so she runs this dude out. But the fact is, it's illegal. They're not allowed to do those things. And so no one's above the law. They just got done lecturing us on that. And now the prices must be paid for breaking the law. Here is what Tom Hman said about this, furious about this. And how dare she even think about doing this? She, of course, if anybody, judges, governors, anybody impedes our work and breaks the law in doing so, you're in trouble.
I said from day one, you don't have to support ICE's operations. You can support sanctuary cities if that's what you desire to do. Sanctuary cities can stand aside and watch ICE keep their communities safe, because any public official, whether you're mayor, city councilman, or governor, their number one responsibility is protection of communities. And ICE has been clear, we're targeting public safety threats and national security threats. I can't believe there's any elected official, and especially a judge, that doesn't believe we should be doing that, and they should be helping us. But I said from day one, you can sit aside and watch, you can argue against us all you want, and protest all you want, but when you cross that line, I've said this 1,000 times, when you cross that line to impediment or knowingly harboring, concealing an illegal alien from ICE, you will be prosecuted, judge or not.
Thank you, Tom. Judge or not, doesn't matter. So don't do it. Follow the law, otherwise you will pay the price for it. Senator Ashley Moody was also talking about this, posted this week, says, I was a judge for over a decade. Hello. If a colleague of mine helped a criminal evade law enforcement or destroy evidence, it would be a crime, obviously. It is not a constitutional crisis to arrest someone who commits a crime. It's how you restore law and order. Ashley Moody from Florida.
Listen, I served as a judge for over a decade. If a colleague of mine had helped a criminal evade law enforcement, if a colleague of mine had harbored someone that law enforcement was looking for, or even, I believe one of these judges went so far as to destroy potential evidence, that's a crime. It doesn't matter what your job is, whether you're a judge or any other profession. So do not listen to the Democrats where they start talking about, oh, we have a constitutional crisis because we're arresting judges. We're arresting people that are committing crimes.
Absolutely.
It does not matter your position.
Don't break the law, judges, and don't act like you're little anti-fascist, heroes or something. We will see you over there and back here on the next one.